The most feared man in the city had everything except one simple thing: someone who could make him smile. Adrian Blackwood was a name that carried power, respect, and distance. At 41 years old, the white Korean Mafia boss had built a world where every detail was controlled, every decision was calculated, and every emotion was carefully hidden. Inside his luxurious mansion overlooking the city, everything was perfect. The expensive furniture, the silent halls, and the endless reminders of his success showed the life of a man who had achieved what many people dreamed of. Yet every morning, Adrian woke up to the same quiet reality. His world was impressive, but it was empty. People around him respected his position, but very few people ever tried to understand the person behind it. To most, Adrian Blackwood was not a man. He was a reputation. He was the serious figure who never laughed at casual conversations, never reacted to jokes, and never allowed anyone close enough to see his true personality. The staff inside the mansion had learned one important rule: never interrupt Adrian's silence. But one ordinary afternoon, something unexpected happened. Sophia Carter, a 28-year-old black maid working inside the estate, was organizing the dining area when Adrian walked in after a long day. Like always, the room became quiet. Everyone noticed his presence. Everyone adjusted their behavior. Except Sophia. She continued arranging the table settings while quietly humming to herself. Adrian noticed and looked at her with curiosity. Most people became nervous around him. Sophia simply continued her work with the same calm expression she had every day. There was no fear in her eyes, no attempt to impress him, and no desire to gain his approval. She treated him like a person instead of a powerful title. Adrian made a dry comment about the perfectly arranged table, saying that even the silverware looked more organized than most people he knew. It was the kind of humor he rarely shared because most people never understood it. But then something unexpected happened. Sophia laughed. Not because she was trying to please him. Not because she wanted anything from him. She simply found the comment genuinely funny. The sound was small, but it stopped Adrian for a moment. He had heard countless compliments, endless praise, and polite conversations throughout his life. But a simple, honest laugh from someone who did not care about his reputation felt completely different. Sophia quickly returned to her work, unaware that the moment had stayed in his mind. She did not realize that the most powerful man in the mansion had just experienced something rare, a genuine human connection. That evening, Adrian found himself thinking about the moment again. He wondered why her reaction felt different from everything else he had experienced. She had not been impressed by his wealth. She had not been intimidated by his reputation. She had simply responded naturally. For the first time in years, Adrian became curious about someone who expected nothing from him. And inside the quiet walls of the Blackwood mansion, the man who never noticed any woman began noticing the one person who saw him as something more than a mafia boss. He did not know it yet, but a simple laugh from a black maid would become the beginning of a change he never expected. After that unexpected moment in the dining room, Adrian Blackwood found himself thinking about something he could not easily explain. It was not the sound of laughter itself that surprised him. It was the reason behind it. For years, people around Adrian reacted to him in predictable ways. They became careful with their words, measured every expression, and treated every conversation like an important negotiation. But Sophia Carter had reacted naturally. She had not seen a powerful figure who needed to be impressed. She had simply seen a person making a dry comment. That difference stayed in Adrian's mind longer than he wanted to admit. The next morning, the Blackwood mansion returned to its usual rhythm. The staff moved quietly through the halls, preparing everything for another busy day. Adrian walked through the house with the same serious expression he had always carried. To everyone else, nothing had changed. But Adrian noticed small details he had ignored before. He noticed the way Sophia greeted everyone politely. He noticed how she remembered small things about the people around her. He noticed how she brought warmth into a place that had always felt formal and distant. Sophia never tried to stand out. That was exactly what made her different. Adrian had spent years surrounded by people who wanted something from him. Some wanted opportunities. Some wanted approval. Some wanted to be close to his influence. Sophia wanted none of those things. She simply did her work with pride and treated everyone with the same respect. One afternoon, Adrian passed by the library and saw Sophia arranging a collection of books that had been left out. He asked why she spent so much time organizing things that many people would not notice. Sophia smiled and explained that small details mattered because they shaped the feeling of a place. A room could be beautiful, but without care, it would still feel empty. Adrian looked around the library quietly. He realized her words described more than a room. They described his entire life. Everything around him represented success, but something was still missing. Sophia had a way of noticing what others ignored. Later that day, Adrian found himself having a short conversation with her again. Normally, he avoided unnecessary conversations. Time was valuable, and he believed every moment should have a purpose. But with Sophia, the silence did not feel uncomfortable. He did not feel the need to maintain the image everyone expected from him. He could simply exist without proving anything. Sophia did not know that this was unusual. To her, she was only speaking with another person inside the mansion. But to Adrian, it was a rare experience. He began to understand that the reason her laughter affected him was not because she found his joke funny. It was because she reminded him of something he had forgotten. Life was not supposed to be only responsibility and control. There were moments meant to be enjoyed. There were conversations meant to be simple. There were people who could make a difficult day feel lighter without asking for anything in return. However, Adrian was not the only person who noticed the difference. Some employees inside the mansion quietly observed that the atmosphere around him seemed different whenever Sophia was nearby. The man who once seemed impossible to approach appeared slightly more relaxed. The change was small, but it was real. Sophia did not try to transform Adrian into someone else. She did not challenge his position or question his authority. She simply treated him with the same kindness she gave everyone. And somehow, that was becoming more powerful than any attempt to change him. Adrian Blackwood had spent years building walls around himself because he believed they protected him. But Sophia Carter was slowly showing him that sometimes the walls keeping people away were the same walls preventing happiness from entering. He still did not understand what was happening. He only knew one thing. For the first time in many years, someone inside his world had made him curious instead of guarded. Adrian Blackwood had spent years believing that every person around him had a reason for being there. In his world, trust was rare, and genuine intentions were even rarer. People often looked at his position before they looked at him. They saw the reputation, the influence, and the carefully controlled image he had built over time. But Sophia Carter continued to surprise him because she never seemed interested in any of those things. She did not change her behavior when Adrian entered the room. She did not become overly careful with her words. She simply remained herself. And that was something Adrian had almost forgotten existed. Days passed, and their small conversations became a quiet routine inside the Blackwood mansion. They were never dramatic moments. They were simple exchanges that most people would have ignored. But to Adrian, those moments carried a strange importance. A question about a book, a brief comment about the weather, a small joke that only Sophia seemed to understand. These ordinary interactions slowly became the most memorable parts of his day. One morning, Adrian found Sophia preparing breakfast arrangements in the kitchen. He noticed she was smiling while listening to music quietly in the background. It was such a normal scene, yet it caught his attention. His mansion was filled with expensive decorations, rare artwork, and everything money could provide. But he realized that the happiest moments inside it often came from the simplest things. Sophia noticed him standing there and greeted him casually. She did not ask if something was wrong. She did not assume he needed anything. She simply welcomed him like she would welcome anyone else. Adrian found that strangely refreshing. He asked her why she always seemed so positive despite working in a place where many people might feel overlooked. Sophia paused for a moment before answering. She explained that happiness was not something people found after everything became perfect. Sometimes, people created happiness by appreciating small moments that already existed. Adrian listened carefully. He had spent his entire life chasing bigger achievements, believing the next success would finally bring satisfaction. But Sophia saw value in things he had stopped noticing. A quiet morning, a kind conversation, a genuine laugh. These were things Adrian had never considered important until now. Later that week, Adrian attended a formal meeting inside the mansion. Several important guests arrived, each one carefully choosing their words while speaking with him. Adrian noticed the difference immediately. Their conversations were respectful, but they felt distant. Everyone wanted to present the best version of themselves. Nobody wanted to simply be real. After the meeting ended, Adrian unexpectedly thought about Sophia again. She never prepared a perfect response before speaking with him. She never acted differently because of his status. She was comfortable enough to be honest, and that honesty made him feel more respected than any formal compliment ever had. Meanwhile, Sophia began noticing small changes in Adrian as well. She saw that he was paying more attention to the people around him. She saw that he occasionally smiled at small things instead of immediately returning to his serious expression. The changes were subtle, but they showed that the man behind the intimidating reputation was slowly allowing himself to appear. Sophia did not take credit for these changes. She did not believe she had special power over him. She simply believed that people revealed different sides of themselves when they felt accepted. Adrian had spent years surrounded by people who feared disappointing him. Sophia was the first person who seemed comfortable enough to remind him that he did not always need to be perfect. One evening, Adrian stood alone near the large windows of the mansion, looking at the city lights below. He thought about how strange it was that a simple conversation with a Black Maid had affected him more than years of admiration from powerful people. He finally understood why. The admiration he received was connected to what he represented. Sophia's kindness was connected to who he was. And for the first time in a very long time, Adrian Blackwood began wondering what life could feel like if he stopped hiding behind the image everyone expected him to maintain. The quiet change inside Adrian Blackwood did not go unnoticed forever. Although he tried to maintain the same serious expression and disciplined routine, the people who worked closely with him began seeing small differences. The man who once moved through the mansion like every moment was another responsibility started slowing down. He listened more carefully. He responded with more patience. He even allowed himself to enjoy brief conversations instead of immediately returning to his endless schedule. Nobody understood the reason behind the change better than Sophia Carter. She never tried to become important in Adrian's life. She never searched for attention or expected special treatment. She simply continued being the same person she had always been. That was exactly why Adrian found himself drawn to her presence. Sophia did not see the powerful figure everyone else talked about. She saw the person who existed behind the reputation. One afternoon, Adrian found Sophia organizing a small reading area near the garden. The space was simple compared to the rest of the mansion, but it felt warmer. There were comfortable chairs, carefully arranged books, and small decorations that made the area feel welcoming. Adrian asked why she spent time improving a place that most people rarely visited. Sophia explained that spaces reflected the people who cared for them. She believed even the quietest corners deserved attention because someone might find comfort there one day. Adrian looked around and realized that Sophia had a way of bringing meaning into ordinary things. She did not need expensive materials or impressive displays to create something valuable. She created value through care. That idea stayed with him. For years, Adrian had measured success through achievements, influence, and control. Sophia measured it through connection and the impact people had on each other. Their perspectives were completely different, yet somehow they balanced one another. As their conversations continued, Adrian began sharing small pieces of himself that he rarely revealed. He spoke about his childhood, the responsibilities he carried, and the pressure of always appearing confident. He did not share these things because he wanted sympathy. He shared them because Sophia made him feel that honesty did not have to be a weakness. She listened without judgment and never treated his struggles as something that made him less capable. Instead, she reminded him that even strong people needed moments of understanding. Sophia also began discovering another side of Adrian. Behind his serious nature was someone who appreciated humor, quiet moments, and simple kindness. The dry jokes she once laughed at were not meaningless. They were small glimpses of the personality he rarely allowed others to see. She realized Adrian was not a person without emotions. He was someone who had spent so long hiding them that he had forgotten how to express them. One evening, during dinner, Adrian made another subtle joke about the formal atmosphere of the mansion. In the past, the room would have remained silent. People would have been too careful to react. But Sophia smiled and laughed naturally. This time, Adrian noticed something different. He did not feel surprised by her reaction anymore. Instead, he found himself appreciating the comfort of the moment. It was no longer about being noticed. It was about sharing something genuine with another person. However, Adrian also began realizing that the world outside the mansion would not easily understand this connection. Many people judged others by position, background, and appearance. They would never understand why someone like him valued the opinion of someone like Sophia. But Adrian was starting to understand something important. The people who truly influenced his life were not always the ones with the highest status. Sometimes, they were the ones who reminded him of things he had forgotten. Sophia Carter had entered his world quietly, but her presence was changing the atmosphere around him in ways no one expected. And for the first time in years, Adrian Blackwood was not afraid of someone seeing the person behind the powerful image. The change in Adrian Blackwood was becoming impossible to ignore. For years, the people around him had known him as a man who valued control above everything else. His schedule was always organized, his decisions were always precise, and his emotions were always hidden behind a calm expression. But recently, something inside the Blackwood mansion felt different. The atmosphere was warmer, conversations lasted longer, and the man who once seemed unreachable was beginning to allow small moments of connection into his carefully controlled life. Sophia Carter noticed these changes, but she never assumed they happened because of her. She did not see herself as someone powerful enough to influence a man like Adrian. She simply believed that every person deserved to be treated with kindness, regardless of their position. That belief was something Adrian had started to admire more than he expected. One morning, Adrian walked into the kitchen and found Sophia preparing a simple breakfast arrangement. It was not a grand event or an important meeting. It was an ordinary moment. Yet Adrian found himself staying longer than necessary. He watched as Sophia moved through the room with patience and focus, greeting everyone with the same warmth she always showed. She noticed small details others ignored. She remembered preferences. She made people feel appreciated. Adrian realized that this was the reason the mansion felt different when she was around. Sophia did not change the building. She changed the feeling inside it. Later that day, Adrian asked Sophia a question that surprised her. He wanted to know why she always treated people with respect, even when they did not always return the same kindness. Sophia thought for a moment before explaining that she believed a person's character was revealed by how they treated others when they had nothing to gain. Those words stayed with Adrian because they challenged something he had believed for years. He had always thought people respected him because of his influence. Sophia reminded him that real respect came from the way a person made others feel. Adrian began thinking about his own life. He remembered countless conversations where people praised him, but very few moments where someone truly understood him. Many people admired the image he created, but Sophia seemed interested in the person behind that image. That difference made him feel something unfamiliar. He felt seen. As the weeks passed, Adrian started noticing that Sophia was not simply kind. She was strong in a way he rarely encountered. She did not need attention to prove her value. She did not need authority to have confidence. She carried herself with quiet dignity, even in a world where many people would have underestimated her. One evening, Adrian and Sophia spoke in the garden behind the mansion. The city lights reflected in the distance, and the quiet surroundings created a rare, peaceful moment. Adrian admitted that he had spent most of his life believing that showing emotions gave others power over him. Sophia listened carefully and told him that emotions were not signs of weakness. They were reminders that a person was still human. Adrian looked away for a moment, thinking about how long he had avoided that truth. He had spent years building a reputation that protected him, but he had never considered what that protection had cost him. Sophia never tried to break down his walls. She simply showed him that he did not always need them. For Adrian, that realization was more meaningful than any achievement he had earned. Meanwhile, Sophia began understanding why Adrian appeared so distant. She saw that his seriousness was not because he lacked compassion. It was because he had carried responsibility for so long that he forgot what it felt like to relax. Their differences became the reason they understood each other. Adrian had power but lacked simplicity. Sophia had simplicity but carried a strength that no position could provide. Together, they created a balance neither of them expected. And as Adrian looked at the woman who had changed the atmosphere of his world without ever trying to control it, he finally understood something important. The person who made him feel most comfortable was not someone who wanted anything from him. She was simply someone who reminded him that beneath every title, every reputation, and every expectation, he was still just a person searching for something real. The relationship between Adrian Blackwood and Sophia Carter continued to grow through moments that seemed ordinary to everyone else. There were no grand announcements, no dramatic changes that happened overnight. Instead, the transformation appeared through small details that only those close to them could notice. The man who once walked through the Blackwood mansion surrounded by silence was slowly becoming someone who allowed warmth into his daily life. Adrian still carried the responsibilities of being a powerful Korean Mafia boss. His decisions still mattered. His presence still commanded attention. But the difference was that he no longer believed he had to carry everything alone. Sophia had shown him that allowing someone to understand him did not make him less capable. It made him more complete. One afternoon, Adrian returned to the mansion earlier than usual. The staff expected him to immediately enter his office, as he normally did after a long day. Instead, he stopped when he saw Sophia sitting in the garden, reading a book during her short break. The peaceful scene caught his attention because it represented something Adrian rarely experienced. A simple moment without pressure, without expectations, without the constant need to prove himself. Sophia noticed him and smiled, asking if his day had been difficult. It was a simple question, but Adrian realized how unusual it felt. Most people asked about his work because they wanted information. Sophia asked because she genuinely cared. Adrian sat nearby and, for once, did not rush away. He spoke about the challenges of his responsibilities, not as someone seeking sympathy, but as someone finally allowing another person to hear his thoughts. Sophia listened quietly, just as she always did. She did not interrupt with advice or try to solve everything. She simply gave him the space to be honest. That was something Adrian valued more than he expected. Throughout his life, people often reacted to his problems with either fear or ambition. Sophia reacted with understanding. Later that week, Adrian attended a formal gathering with influential people from different parts of his world. The room was filled with confident personalities and carefully chosen words. Everyone wanted to appear successful. Everyone wanted to appear important. Adrian observed the conversations around him and realized how different they felt from the quiet moments he shared with Sophia. In that room, people respected the position he held, but Sophia respected the person he was. That realization stayed with him. After returning home, Adrian found Sophia in the hallway organizing a small collection of items for the household. He thanked her for something simple she had done earlier that day. Sophia looked surprised because she considered it part of her responsibility. Adrian explained that appreciation should never be limited by someone's role. Everyone deserved to know when their efforts mattered. Sophia smiled because she recognized another small change in him. The man who once overlooked simple gestures was beginning to understand their importance. Adrian's transformation was not only noticed by Sophia. The employees inside the mansion began seeing it as well. The atmosphere had changed. People felt more comfortable around him. Conversations became more natural. The mansion no longer felt like a place where everyone had to carefully choose every word. Sophia never asked Adrian to become someone else. She never challenged his authority or tried to change his identity. She simply reminded him of the humanity he had hidden beneath years of responsibility. One evening, Adrian stood in front of a mirror in his office, thinking about the person he had become. He was still the same man with the same ambitions and responsibilities. But something important had shifted. He no longer measured his life only by achievements. He began measuring it by moments that had meaning. A simple conversation, a genuine laugh, a person who saw him beyond his title. For years, Adrian believed happiness was something distant that came after success. Sophia showed him that sometimes happiness appeared quietly, in the moments people almost overlooked. And the most unexpected person in his life had become the person who reminded him how to truly live. The changes in Adrian Blackwood became clearer with each passing day, but what surprised people most was not that he had changed. It was the reason behind the change. No one expected a man known for his discipline, seriousness, and emotional distance to be influenced by someone as different from him as Sophia Carter. Yet the Black Maid who once seemed invisible to everyone else had become the person who brought a different atmosphere into Adrian's carefully controlled world. Sophia never tried to gain recognition. She never looked for attention from Adrian or the people around him. She continued living with the same kindness and confidence she had always carried. That was exactly why her presence became so meaningful. Adrian had spent years surrounded by people who adjusted themselves around him. They changed their tone, their behavior, and even their opinions because of his position. Sophia did the opposite. She remained honest, and that honesty became something Adrian respected deeply. One morning, Adrian entered the main hall and noticed several employees discussing a small issue involving the daily routine of the mansion. In the past, he would have simply given an order and moved on. But this time, he stopped and listened. He asked questions. He considered different perspectives. The employees were surprised because they had rarely seen him take that kind of approach. Sophia watched quietly from a distance and noticed something important. Adrian was not becoming softer because he had lost his strength. He was becoming wiser because he understood that leadership was not only about making decisions. It was also about understanding people. Later that afternoon, Adrian and Sophia walked through the garden behind the mansion. The peaceful setting created a rare moment away from expectations and responsibilities. Adrian admitted that he used to believe people only respected him because of what he represented. He thought his value came from his influence, his achievements, and the reputation he had built. Sophia told him that those things could earn attention, but they could never replace genuine connection. Adrian listened carefully because he knew she was right. For years, he had been surrounded by people who noticed his success but ignored his feelings. Sophia had done the opposite. She noticed the person behind everything else. Their conversations continued to change both of them. Adrian learned that being respected did not mean always appearing perfect. Sophia learned that even people with enormous power could carry hidden struggles. They did not come from the same background, but they understood something about each other that others could not see. However, outside the peaceful environment of the mansion, not everyone understood the connection between them. Some people questioned why Adrian valued the opinion of someone with a different social position. They believed importance came from wealth, influence, and status. They did not see what Adrian had already discovered. A person's true value was revealed through character. One evening, during a formal event at the mansion, Adrian noticed how differently people treated Sophia compared to him. Many guests spoke to him with immediate respect because of his reputation. Some barely noticed Sophia because they only saw her role. Adrian watched this carefully. For the first time, he understood how often people judged others without taking the time to truly know them. When Sophia later offered a thoughtful observation about the event, Adrian openly acknowledged her perspective in front of everyone. It was a simple gesture, but it carried meaning. He was showing that her voice mattered. Sophia did not need a title to prove her worth. Adrian simply wanted others to recognize what he had already seen. As the evening ended, Adrian looked around the mansion and realized how much had changed. The walls were the same. The rooms were the same. But the feeling inside was completely different. The place that once represented distance and isolation had become a place where people could be genuine. Sophia Carter had never tried to change Adrian Blackwood. She had simply reminded him of something he had forgotten. Power could make people notice you, but kindness could make people remember you. The connection between Adrian Blackwood and Sophia Carter had reached a point where even the smallest moments carried meaning. What started as a simple laugh in a quiet room had slowly become something that changed the entire atmosphere of the Blackwood mansion. Adrian was still the same man the world recognized. He was still a powerful Korean Mafia boss with responsibilities, influence, and a reputation that made people careful around him. But inside the mansion, there was a side of Adrian that very few people had ever witnessed. He was learning how to be present instead of constantly being in control. Sophia noticed this transformation, but she never treated it like an achievement. She never looked at Adrian as a project that needed to be fixed. She simply appreciated the person he was becoming. One afternoon, Adrian found Sophia in the library, arranging a collection of old books that had been untouched for years. He asked why she cared about a room that most people rarely entered. Sophia explained that forgotten places often contain the most valuable stories. She believed every object and every person had meaning, even when others overlooked them. Adrian became quiet after hearing that. He realized she was not only talking about books, she was talking about people. For much of his life, Adrian had been surrounded by individuals who valued what he could provide. Sophia was the first person who reminded him that value existed beyond usefulness. She saw him as someone worth understanding, not simply someone worth following. As their conversations continued, Adrian began opening up about parts of his life he rarely mentioned. He spoke about the pressure of always being expected to make the right decision. He shared how exhausting it was to maintain an image of someone who never struggled. Sophia listened with the same patience she showed everyone else. She did not interrupt with simple answers because she understood that some things only needed to be heard. Adrian realized that her silence was not emptiness. It was support. It was the kind of understanding he had spent years searching for without knowing it. Sophia also began seeing the difference between the man people talked about and the man standing in front of her. The world saw Adrian as someone untouchable, but she saw the small details others missed. She saw how carefully he treated the people around him. She saw how much responsibility he carried. She saw that beneath the serious expression was someone who still appreciated kindness. One evening, the mansion hosted a formal gathering with important guests. The elegant hall was filled with conversations about success, influence, and reputation. Adrian noticed how easily people judged others based on appearance and position. Some guests spoke to him with admiration because of his status, while they barely acknowledged Sophia because of her role inside the mansion. For years, Adrian would have ignored such behavior. But this time, he noticed it differently. He understood that Sophia had spent much of her life being underestimated by people who never took the time to know her. During the gathering, Adrian asked Sophia for her opinion about a topic being discussed. The room became noticeably quieter. It was not because he demanded attention. It was because his action showed something important. He valued her thoughts openly and without hesitation. Sophia responded calmly, sharing her perspective with confidence. She did not try to prove she belonged in that room. She already knew she did. After the event ended, Adrian and Sophia walked through the quiet halls of the mansion. Adrian admitted that he once believed respect came from making people recognize his power. Sophia reminded him that the deepest respect came when people recognized someone's character. Those words stayed with him. He understood that his greatest change did not come from gaining more control. It came from allowing himself to experience something genuine. Sophia Carter had entered his world as someone many people overlooked. But she became the person who showed Adrian Blackwood that the most meaningful connections are often found where others never think to look. Time had passed since Adrian Blackwood first heard Sophia Carter's unexpected laughter, but he still remembered that simple moment as the beginning of something he never expected. The powerful Korean Mafia boss who once believed his life was complete had discovered that the most meaningful changes often came from the smallest moments. The Blackwood mansion, once filled with silence and distance, had become a place where conversations felt natural and where people no longer felt the need to hide every thought. Adrian was still respected throughout the city. He still carried the responsibilities that came with his position. But the difference was clear. He no longer allowed his reputation to define every part of his life. Sophia Carter had shown him that being strong did not mean being unreachable. It meant having the courage to let someone see the person behind the image. Sophia never changed who Adrian was. She never asked him to abandon his responsibilities or forget the world he came from. Instead, she reminded him that even someone with great power could still appreciate kindness, honesty, and simple moments of happiness. One morning, Adrian walked through the garden behind the mansion and found Sophia caring for the flowers she had planted months earlier. The garden had become one of the few places where he felt completely at peace. He watched her carefully arrange each flower with patience and attention. When he asked why she spent so much time caring for something that required constant effort, Sophia smiled and explained that beautiful things often needed consistent care. She said people were the same. They needed understanding, patience, and kindness to grow. Adrian looked at her quietly because he knew her words carried a meaning deeper than the garden itself. For years, he had focused on building something powerful. He had protected his position, his reputation, and his success. But Sophia had taught him that a meaningful life was not only about what a person built. It was also about who they allowed into that life. Adrian eventually realized that Sophia was never important because she changed his world with dramatic actions. She became important because she changed the way he viewed the world around him. She reminded him to notice the people who were often ignored. She reminded him that respect was not something created by fear or status. It was something earned through the way people were treated. Sophia also experienced her own transformation. She entered the Blackwood mansion knowing that many people would see her only through her position. But over time, She learned that her kindness and character were recognized by someone who truly valued them. Adrian never made her feel like she needed to become someone else. He respected her exactly as she was. Their connection became a quiet reminder that two people from completely different backgrounds could still understand each other. The world outside might have focused on their differences, but inside the mansion, they focused on what they shared. They both understood what it felt like to be judged without being known. They both understood the importance of being seen for who they truly were. Years earlier, Adrian thought the strongest person was the one who needed nobody. Now he understood something different. Real strength came from knowing when to trust, when to listen, and when to appreciate the people who brought meaning into life. Sophia had not entered his world seeking power or recognition. She had entered his world with kindness, and that kindness revealed a part of Adrian that had been hidden for years. The man who once believed happiness was a distraction discovered that happiness could be a source of strength. The woman whom many people overlooked became the person everyone eventually recognized. And inside the quiet halls of the Blackwood mansion, the greatest lesson remained clear. A person's value is never determined by their position, their wealth, or the opinions of others. It is revealed through the kindness they share and the humanity they protect. Adrian Blackwood was still a powerful man, but he was no longer a man trapped behind his own reputation. Sophia Carter was still the same humble person she had always been, but now her strength was impossible to ignore. Together, they proved that sometimes the person who changes your life is not the one who sees your power. It is the one who sees your humanity.